again, it's finally let me in. Wonderful, Teal. Thank you so much. And all three of you, it's just been a wonderful reading, and it's not over yet, even though you think it might be. I'm gonna ask anyone who's here at the reading if you have any questions for any of our readers or any comments first. And after we've had whatever we can draw out of them that they weren't prepared for, I'm going to ask each of you if you would just read a little bit more. So let's start with David. Somebody has any questions? I have a question. When did you and how did you start writing?
I started writing when I was a kid, I think maybe 7 years old. And then, yeah, in fact, my mother put together a book of my poems, and I think she just gave it to, family and friends. And then I started again when I was in my early 20s, I guess. And, through that, I got involved with the different workshops in and around Portland, and the different groups like Oregon Poetry Association, which then was still called Oregon State Poetry Association. And I went to the Concord in Newport. Took workshops whenever I could, and got together with other poets.
When did you start publishing?
Yeah, I sent out stuff that got published, I don't know, a few years ago, I guess. I don't remember anymore what year it was. I think probably I got started with that though when I was getting my undergraduate degree. The college where I was, I learned that they had a literary magazine, and I submitted some stuff to them that I think they put in.
Wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, those probably, you're not as old as I am, but still probably were the times when they published things, they cut and paste things. And I once submitted to to LCC Denali, and they called me up to apologize that they lost my poem under the table. So anything can happen. Anything can happen. Does anyone else have any questions, comments for David, except it was an incredible reading? Unmute yourself and begin, Shirley.
Do you prefer writing poetry or, the short pieces that you read, or do you think you want to write a longer one?
I've been working on some, yeah, that's a good question, Shirley, thank you. I've been working on some longer pieces. When I start writing, I don't know what I'm going to come up with really. But it was suggested to me that at a certain point by a teacher and mentor that a piece that I was writing and really struggling with was, she said, you've got a lot to say here, and you're trying to cram it into this little box. Instead, she encouraged me, instead, David, just write. Just, don't worry about how short or how long it turns out to be. You just need to do some writing right now. And then later from her, I took a workshop on the lyric essay, which I had never heard of until that point. So, I mean, I don't really know, other than I feel like at this point, I'm sort of, some of the pieces go together to tell a longer story, I would say. And others I'm content with, they seem to want to be poems. So, I mean, I don't know. It just depends. One thing I do appreciate is getting the chance to read them out loud, because you experience a poem in a different way when you hear it and feel it and breathe it, and it kind of inhabits your body, than when it's on a page. So sometimes I find myself having to do that, just reading it out loud and hearing it and feeling it, and Oh, okay. So where am I at the end of this piece that I wasn't at the beginning?
Mhm.
Hmm.
I agree. It's also good to hear it, read it, and see it. A lot of poems. If you don't see it on the page, you miss a lot too. So both, I would say. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more thing, did you ever combine your reading with when you were working in memory care centers? Did you ever like read to the people in there or inspire them to do some writing?
I did do, I worked with, when Steve Williams and Constance Hall were doing their project in senior assisted living communities and memory care communities. I did work with them, and I volunteered, and yeah, that was really a wonderful experience. Um, you know, I remember that so clearly. Actually, there was a woman, and she would just tell her story, and I was writing it down because it was too hard for her to physically write herself. And then I read to her out loud what she had told me, and she said, "Oh no, oh no, what?" She said, "Oh, it sounds like I've been born twice." Because she had told me, I just wrote it down as she told me. And so, then I just read it, by then Steve and Constance said, okay, everyone, let's share what we've come up with. So I told the woman, I said, oh, I guess I'm going to have to read it the way it is. Is that okay? She said, oh, it's okay. And I read it. And when I finished, and this was a woman who'd been, pretty quiet until this point. So I read the piece, and then she said, as soon as I finished, she said, I've already come up with the title, Confessions of a Wandering Mind. And we all just laughed, because she looked really serious up until that point. Yeah, that was a really great experience. On the other hand, I mean, it depends on what's the word I'm trying to find, the role, I guess, or the purpose for my, like, if I'm working professionally with seniors, I want to be really careful that the writing is part of my purpose. If it's not, then I'm not gonna impose that on them. I'm not gonna make I think it's really important that people not feel obligated, like, oh, okay, here's David, so there has to be a poem. I don't want it to be an assignment, or for there to be any sense of obligation. If that's not where they're at, then then the exchange is not going to work. But if it is part of the arrangement, then by all means, then I would go for it.
Thank you. Anyone else want to catch him before we go on to Ruth? No more comment? Thank you so much, David. And thank you for reading for us, really. Ruth, same question. When did you start writing?
Oh my gosh. I think I've always kind of been a writer just because I journaled so much when I was a kid. But I started writing in college about my life. My mom took me out of school when I was 14, and so I didn't really, I got my GED and ended up going to community college, and had the opportunity to start writing more about my life in more of a academic way. And my professors and teachers would be like, wow, you should really write your story. But I actually didn't even think about writing the memoir until one day I was going to Southern Oregon University. I raised my youngest sisters in Grants Pass, so we were in Southern Oregon. And I had just gotten out of school. I picked them up. My sisters were 8, 10, and 12, Leah, Holly, and Elena. And we were sitting at a Burger King truck stop, ordering off the dollar menu and just sitting down after a long day of school, basically, for all of us. And my sister Leah, who was about 10, asked me about our mom. And she said, so what happened to our mom anyway, and to our brother? And I had realized at that point that I hadn't told them the situation and what had happened and why I took them, why we ran away, why we escaped after our mom died and our little brother. And so I started thinking about writing then. So at that point, I was in my early 20s, mid 20s, and my sisters, I was a single parent on food stamps, you know, financial aid and all the things. But by the time they were in high school, I had finished graduate school and I got a job teaching at Gladstone High School here in the Southeast Portland area. And I was teaching Spanish, and actually ended up teaching all three of my sisters in my classroom. So, but after that, I had student teachers like at Lewis and Clark and all over the community, all over the area, and had free classes at the places where I took in student teachers from like, so I started taking community college classes and nonfiction classes online in the summers. Yeah, so that's really when I started. And I thought then when my sister started asking me, I was like, oh, I really should write the story for them.
Maybe you should explain to people who didn't read the book a little bit.
Sure.
About what happened to your brother and mother, so on.
So my dad was the prophet of the community, and he died when I was a baby. There was a big falling out in the church, and his brother, actually, that he started the church, was assassinated, had my father assassinated. So I didn't have a father, which left me vulnerable, I think, in a patriarchal or hyper-patriarchal society like the one I grew up in. And my mom remarried my stepdad, who was also polygamous. He was a follower of my father's and an elder in the church, high up in the church. And I was 3 months old when my father died. And then my mom, after she had been married, I think a little over a decade, I was 15 years old when my stepfather had built an adobe house. We actually didn't have electricity or a toilet even in the house when I was a kid. It was a pretty rugged area, kind of pioneer style living. But by the time I had turned 15 years old, he wasn't an electrician, but he had put in the electricity, and there were literally, he didn't know what he was doing. It was just kind of a makeshift situation. And there were literally 220-volt bare wires all over our property. And my mom had 6 more kids, so there were 10 of us. I was definitely the second mom in the situation. And in polygamy, men, you know, my stepdad had 4 wives and 25 kids, and he was hardly ever around. But he had set up the situation there with the electricity that led to an accident that killed my youngest brother and my mom. So that was when I was 15. My youngest sister at that time was 5 months. I had a 2-year-old sister, and my other sister was 4 years old, and my brother Micah was 5, and he was lost in the accident as well. So at that point, because my stepfather had been so abusive, I found out that he was abusing another of my brothers after he had abused me for years. And so that was part of what I read towards the end of the book. The last part that I read a little earlier was that, you know, my mom was, you know, when our situation, she was the center of the world. I mean, mothers are in polygamy because the men aren't around much. So I identified so strongly with her and that situation, and especially being one of the oldest daughters, helping her take care of all the kids. And it's part of the reason why she took me out of school, so that I could help her with the kids. It wasn't a society that really believed in education very much. It was pretty much all about the church and my dad's teachings and, you know, getting married and having kids, which a lot of my friends were at about 14 and 15 back in the Barrens, back in the 80s. So after she passed away, that's when I decided there wasn't really anything else keeping me there. She had been that for me, the connection that I had with the town. And she was from the United States. My grandparents had left the church when my dad was killed. And so my grandmother lived in California, and that's when we decided she took us in pretty much, and we filed for custody and got custody of my sisters. And then I moved up to Southern Oregon to live close to my aunt with my sisters. They were I think at that point, 4, 6, and 8. And then I had a teenage brother too that we were kind of the party of 5 in Grants Pass, Oregon. Nothing like the show. I don't know if you remember that 90s show, but there was no inheritance or anything like that. But that's when I was inspired to go to college and start writing. You know, really, that was part of my process, was just loving learning. I spent a lot of time with my little sisters in their classrooms and just loved watching them learn. That part was really exciting for me, so I decided to go into education at that point. Yeah, and I taught for 8 years before I decided to write the book, and took classes all over town after my sisters graduated, when I had a lot more freedom and more financial freedom, I guess you might say, time and money, those 2 important things. So yeah, I realized as I was writing, though, I was like, oh, I'm going to write this for my sisters. I wanted them to know about their mom and why they didn't have a mom or a dad. And we weren't the traditional family, which many families aren't these days, or maybe they never were, I don't know. But as I was writing and took more time, I started working with a freelance editor. And as I wrote, you know, I didn't always know either when I sat down to write. You never know what's going to come up or what you're going to think of or what you're going to remember. And did a lot of interviews with my mom's sisters and the family. Went back to LeBaron and did a lot of writing from photographs. So yeah, as I wrote, I realized that it was more about me finding my own voice. You know, it was really about me trying to figure out for myself where I had come from and how I felt about it. I wanted to have a say in my own life, basically, and that writing kind of gave me that opportunity and that form of self-expression that I think I needed.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Long-winded.
Anybody else have anything to ask Ruth about? I'm going to catch you, Teal. I think you're still here.
Yeah, sorry, my connection went wonky for a minute, and I dropped and came back and dropped and came back. So hopefully it's calmed down now.
I'm glad you're here. I'm going to catch you with the same first question: is when did you start writing and how?
Well, it was 2005 when I converted to Sufism, and I was 40 at the time, so it's kind of a late start. And I had never really thought that I would write poetry when I was really young, and I read a lot because, you know, that's what you do when you're a kid and you don't have anything else to do. I thought I'd be a novelist. I thought I'd write science fiction and fantasy because that's what I grew up reading, and I never really thought that I'd write poetry. But when I converted to Sufism, almost immediately thereafter, all of these poems started to emerge, and I thought, well, okay, if this is what I'm meant to do, then I need to figure out how.
Wow. I mean, I suppose this is sort of, I don't know. Anyway, Rumi, did you meet Rumi through Sufism?
Yeah, or possibly I met Sufism through Rumi.
Okay.
Yeah, so reading Rumi's poetry was definitely an important part of the process of my connecting with Sufism.
And you call yourself a warrior, Sufi warrior. Explain.
Well, so Sufi and warrior aren't necessarily connected, but my poetry definitely comes through Sufism. And I call myself a warrior poet because, especially over the last 4.5, 5 years, I have increasingly felt that I needed to write about the things that are going on in the world. And I know a lot of people, especially after the election in 2016 and into the early years of the now thankfully defunct Trump administration, were really struggling with all these horrible things are happening and we need to do something about it. And as writers, of course, when you say do something, immediately you reach for to write, right? Because that's what we know how to do. And a lot of people struggled with how, and many people, surprisingly to me, struggled with why. Like, is it really the right thing to do? Should we as poets be addressing this? Does this somehow fall outside the allowed realm for poetry? And I could not countenance that. I have no patience for people who think that poetry shouldn't address the wrongs of the world and make any effort to try and right them. So I decided that I would not only do that, but I would present myself as the poet that does that. And that's when I started to call myself a warrior poet.
Well, you're a wonderful warrior. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else of the people here who have a question to catch one of these with? Erica, go for it.
I'd like to address all three of our readers today. And I just want to say that I think you are all three warriors. You're like Ruth was a warrior against a really destructive patriarchal system that destroyed children and women. And by the way, Ruth, I read your book years ago and I was just amazed by it. So it's a real privilege for me to hear you here in person.
Oh, thank you.
I was inspired, frightened. I was just like, I couldn't believe the courage that you had in that you just knew what you had to do. And that a young girl and a few kids stood up against that system and escaped is like a miracle. And David, when you were writing about like Matthew Shepard and being a gay man in this terrifying culture and being able to like negotiating a relationship where you're, or half of you is not honest about the relationship, I thought about what that meant to human relations. It's the connection between two human beings. And I thought that showed a huge amount of courage for you to write about that and just to acknowledge that was your everyday existence for a long time, and that somebody that you loved wasn't being honest. And that I think is really, really amazing and beautiful that you wrote about that. And of course, Teal, your bio says you are a warrior, and you're a warrior for the good, right? A warrior for what needs
Well, I hope so.
said, right? What needs to be said and what needs to be acknowledged in our culture. And so I think it's interesting that when Joan and I put our groups together of readers, we often find that there are these mysterious connections that we didn't know exist. And that's what I find so magical about our readings. Is like, we don't know. We of course know something about your reading and about your writing because we want to hear you. We don't know where those subtle things will be, like those spiritual or those motivations that you all bring. So I just want to say I really enjoyed this reading, and I'm so grateful that you all were able to come and share your reading with us, because it's all beautiful and thought-provoking. And I always take lots of notes when I hear people, but I took extra notes. I have like yellow stickies all over my desk here, just ideas that were churning around in my own brain. So I salute you. You're wonderful. Thank you.
Charles, I think you just came alive here. Did you want to ask a question or make a comment?
Oh, no, I've been sitting down through all this. I'm fine. No questions. I enjoyed the reading very much.
Can I just say something really quick? This is Rebecca, who doesn't have my picture up here.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I feel very lucky to have stumbled upon you people through a Facebook post. I didn't know you existed until today. And I want to thank you for opening this up to the public. And clearly you guys kind of know each other. And I just feel very honored to be here and to listen to your beautiful poetry. I wonder if any of you Portland poets know my friend Casey Bush.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes.
I went to high school with him, so.
Oh, well, I used to run a reading series here at Tsunami Books, a renowned bookstore. And I had Casey Books and Dan Raphael
All right.
to read. And by the way, you got that Facebook post from a guy with the moniker of Kokua?
No, I think it was, I'm not sure exactly how it happened, but the
Oh,
link
Okay.
got me here, and I need to dip out because I need to go to another Zoom meeting.
Oh, okay. Anyway,
Do you guys do this like monthly, or what is your?
Last Sunday of every month.
Okay, so I should just kind of keep my eyes peeled on Facebook?
Last Sunday of every month, yeah. yeah, the link will be around, and you can also send a message to me, Joan Doby, on
Okay.
Facebook, and give me your email. I'll put you on our mailing list.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you for coming. Onward and forward. We still have just about 9 more minutes, so we can either just, say goodbye to each other, or we can ask each of you to read just one more short little something to polish off the reading.
I gotta go, so see ya.
Bye-bye, Charles.
Bye-bye.
I think everyone's saying it's time to go. So thank you so much. It was a magnificent reading. It was really just really special. And Erica is the one who turns it into videos. So within the next few days, you'll be able to also hear yourselves, hear each other, and also, do you edit it or just whatever our conversation is, Erica?
I do some editing, yes, a little bit.
Okay.
Because there's always somebody that like jumped in but didn't have their mute on and coughed or something. So I do have to cut out some things, but it's basically just it's each person. I make a video for each reader, and then now we have this section for questions and comments. So there'll be a total of 4. So one for each of you individually, and then the conversation at the end. So
Will you keep me on your mailing list, please, for the next month?
I
absolutely,
think you're on it. You should be on it.
we'll be on it forever.
Oh, okay. All right, sounds
Yeah,
great. Thank
and
you. I
I-
just wanted to make sure so I could join you again.
Yes, please. You should be on it, and if all goes well, I'll be sending you a video and also a million times probably the link and get it for the next reader. Oh, that's
Okay.
important. No. Next month, let me tell you who's reading next month. Actually, give me just a moment. I always forget this, and I finally didn't forget it. So it's exciting. Now all I have to do is find it. Hold on. Have a little bit of patience here. Aha. So I wish I could. All right, I will just tell you who's reading next month. And I was hoping to have the flyer for you, but I don't. So Nils Peterson, and that's someone Erica can tell you a little bit about, right? So can you?
Sorry.
Okay. Because Erica found Nils Peterson for us.
Nils was one of my professors at San Jose State, and he is, I mean, his bio just goes on and on and on, but to encapsulate, he's a fantastic poet, he's a wonderful professor, he's a really wonderful reader, and he just published this incredible book. I have to show you the cover. This is his book, and I know he's going to be reading from it. It's called All the Marvelous Stuff. And it is such a beautiful book. It has all this lovely artwork inside of it, and it was designed by a professional graphic artist. I mean, it's so gorgeous. It's a gorgeous book. Everybody should buy this book and give it to their best friend. So he's going to be reading from this book and probably, his vast body of collected works over the years. And I think you'll really enjoy him. He's a wonderful reader.
I just realized I can actually show you the flyer literally from this other computer. So can you see people's pictures?
It's a little bit, we can see the photographs. So you
Yeah.
can see Nils, and I can see Jorah.
And
And I
Jorah
can see Rachel.
LaFleur
Yeah.
will be reading, and she is a, what do you call it?
Spoken
Poet.
word. She's a
Yeah,
spoken word poet.
spoken word poet, but
And
no,
she's great.
slam poet, slam poet.
Yeah, she's a slam poet.
And she's incredible.
She is
She
really
did read
wonderful.
us for us once before, and she's good friends with Scott from Tsunami Books. And so she will be putting a lot, as you can see in her picture, this is her energy right here.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
Our third reader is a playwright, Rachel Karnes. And I don't know her again. Erica knows her.
Yes, and I know some of Rachel's work. She's done some videos of some of the screenplays that she's written. But I'm basically friends with her mom. So it's a mom tip. And Rachel's a really lovely person, and I think it'll be wonderful.
I will read you a little bit about her. Rachel received a 2000 Oregon Literary Fellowship and had more than 75 productions across the US, UK, Canada, the Middle East, and Asia, with many, many invitations to develop work, including at the Lilith Inge Theater Festival 2015, the Midwest, anyway, there's a huge list of them. So that's Rachel who's coming. Those are our 3 readers in February. So it's February 28th, 4:30 p.m. And the link will be on our website. The link will probably come, if I've got your email, it will come in your email. And it will be, I just keep repeating it around. So with that, we only have 3 more minutes to say goodbye to each other. And it's just been an incredible reading. Thank you so, so much.